François-Pierre Picaud was a 19th century shoemaker in Nimes, France. In 1807, Picaud was engaged to marry a very rich woman. He had hit the jackpot. However, his three friends, Lupien, Solari and Schobert, were haters and didn't want the best for their friend Pierre. So they came up with a plan and falsely accused him of being a spy for England. Pierre also had a fourth friend, Alot, who knew of this scheme but chose not to tell anyone. Poor Pierre also had no clue his friends had backstabbed him and found himself in the Fenestral fortress with not a Scooby in the world how he'd ended up there. It wasn't until his second year in prison that he'd learned of the betrayal of his friends. Now whilst in prison, he dug a small passageway into the neighbouring cell and befriended a wealthy Italian priest called Father Torrey. Another year passed by and Father Torrey was on his last legs, on his deathbed. Before dying, Father Torrey gave the location of a treasure in Milan to Pierre. In 1814, after the fall of the French imperial government, Pierre was released into the streets and he went on to find the treasure. After finding the treasure, he changed his name, his identity, and returned to Paris and spent 10 years plotting a big revenge against his friends. You can tell this was a motivated and dedicated man. Pierre's first target was Schobert. He found Schobert,
surprise motherfucker,
and just straight up murdered him. Nice and simple. Next on the hit list was Lupien. Now for some reason Lupien got absolutely fisted by Pierre. Pierre took out the majority of his anger on Lupien. I don't know why. Now Lupien was married to Pierre's former fiancée, the rich woman. Oh. Well, that explains it. Anyways, Pierre tricked Lupien's daughter to marry a criminal who he then arrested, thus resulting in Lupien's daughter dying of shock. I don't know if this was part of the plan, but if it was, Pierre is a genius. Pierre then burned down Lupien's lovely restaurant, leaving Lupien penniless. Then, after Pierre made Lupien a hobo and put him through all that suffering with his daughter and all that stuff, he then stabs him to death. And lastly, we have Solari, who was poisoned to death. Now, it's clear that Pierre poured all his energy and resources into Lupien. I'd guess out of the 10 years of his plotting, 9 of those years were specifically just for Lupien. And that's it. That is the revenge story of Pierre. He went on to live happily ever. We forgot about Alot. Alot's watching everything from the back. I don't know how he's got all this information, but he's just chilling at the back, watching everything unfold. And then Alot takes Pierre captive. Whilst in captivity, Pierre gets seriously injured. And then Pierre was eventually found by the French police. And Pierre confessed everything that had happened just before he himself died. On Alot's deathbed, he then gave a detailed description as well of Pierre's time in prison, which couldn't have actually been known by Alot as he wasn't with Pierre in prison. So Alot's response to how he knows this information was, well, you remember Father Torrey? Yeah, his ghost told me. So you can believe what you want, guys. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the answer he gave. One of my favourite things, by the way, little side fact, is when you type Pierre's name on Google, Wikipedia simply says shoemaker, as if he didn't turn into French John Wick and just went sicko mode on all his friends.